Good evening, friends. Welcome to the episode 4 of my journey sharing, my journey with Mohanji. It's been a very special journey, and in today's episode, I will touch upon some very deep, intimate, at times painful topics. And I welcome you to join me in this journey because I believe we learn a lot from each other. We learn a lot from other people's experiences as well. In the last episode, I shared my agonies of my stay alone in Dubai and continuous prolonged continuous delays where things were just slipping through my fingers and just like when the whatever you want to hold, it just passes like a sand through your fingers and nothing really stays. I'm sorry, is the sound not okay? Okay, please, Chitra, if you can give a comment if the sound is better now. The mic is here. Okay, so one of those agonies was also when I was looking for a job. I was just about to get it, and then in the last minute, they found somebody else. So this kept on going, and it's a real test of one's patience, you know. And finally, my wish became fulfilled, and I did get a job in Oman so that I could join Mohanji. But then for months, there was a delay with the visa. One paper was missing, other paper was missing. Something with my diploma from Italy, then attestation of the diploma from America was not right, and this went on and on. I submitted, resubmitted, then resubmitted again, and at some point I just broke down, and I asked Mohanji, "Can you help me? I don't know what to do anymore. It's just not happening, and no matter how much you try, it's just not happening." So at some point, certain despair takes over, and then Mohanji said, "I will take care." This is his favorite statement. Many of you would have probably been in the position to experience when he says, "I'll take care." And after that, when I submitted again all the diplomas and documents, finally the approval came. And post-Ramadan period, I remember, finally, I got the job in Mercedes-Benz dealership in Oman, in Muscat, and I could join Mohanji. So that's where a different journey started. And it was wonderful to be back with Mohanji. Very soon afterwards, I came to know that I'm entitled to get an accommodation through the company. And, because I was beaten so badly by life, I had absolutely no expectations, So when I was actually given a house by the company, only 5 minutes away from the office, I was amazed. And it just so happened that one family who was in Oman for maybe 17 years or something like that, they decided to leave Oman, and this house was vacant. So I just had this feeling this is not a coincidence. And then when we went to see the house, everything was okay, but there was this huge living room and a room next to the living room that were like big and empty. And the previous person checking out the house said, like, "I don't need this much space downstairs. What is that for?" But the moment we came and inspected the house, we looked, and I looked at Mohanji, he looked at me, and we smiled. And we knew that tradition made this possible for us to conduct meditation, to start gathering the people, because that was our dream, to have our own place big enough to host people. So that's how the beauty of our weekend gatherings with Power of Purity meditation. At that time, we used to do first Shirdi Baba Arati for half an hour or so, and then the meditation, and then we would have food together and like a mini satsang with Mohanji. And it used to be really, really beautiful. This went on for like 5 years in the same house. So we were very grateful. At this point in time, the discussion came about the marriage. Now, Mohanji and I were both fine with not legally getting married. We were together already for years, and we were fine with staying together in that way. But living together, man and woman living together in the Middle East without formally, defining the relationship is not the same as it would be in the West. So it was not possible. So we said, okay, we'll get married. But we didn't want to make like a big wedding, involve the religious aspect into it, and nothing. We just wanted to make it very simple, just kind of get the formality done and move on with our higher purpose. So the wedding was arranged in Serbia, in the town of Novi Sad, where my parents live, and it was a very sweet event. And I remember a friend of ours, Mira, she told me later on how she never saw this happening. We were both late. I was stuck in traffic. Mohanji went somewhere else to get another paper done, and he was late, and we almost missed the wedding. And then in the last moment, it happened. So it just went on like that. Then there was a small gathering at my home. At that time, my parents had like a mini restaurant going, so there was enough space to gather the guests. And we all gathered. There was vegetarian food, non-vegetarian. Everybody was happy. And 2 hours later, we told the guests, actually, thank you all for gathering. It was wonderful to meet you, to be with you. But now we have a meditation to conduct in the capital city of Belgrade. So I remember my aunts from Croatia, they were like, excuse me? Well, did you just say that you're leaving your wedding? I said, well, yeah, that was the only time we could organize the meditation, and it's very important. Many people are coming, so it's time for us to, change the clothing and get going to Belgrade. So they were totally shocked with the statement. But I always remember this moment as a small divine play and a sign of us always being focused on the mission work, even in this times of formalities like the weddings. So that evening, I remember the meditation in Belgrade was very special. And we would have to dig up a photo that was taken at that time. But the photo was a proof of the special energy that happened. As the meditation was being conducted, Mohanji became like completely empty from within. And because many people in Serbia connect with Jesus Christ, in that moment, this is what the mirror of Mohanji's consciousness reflected back to them. And many of them, after meditation, opening their eyes, and during the meditation, were having the presence of Jesus Christ. And even on the photo itself, there was like a transparent shade over his face. Just like when you have a photo with a bit of a blur, but that was not a normal blurred image. It was like a transparent shade over his face, which completely made him look like Jesus. And it was very, very special to see. So Mohanji explained how when we are able to dissolve the ego and become completely empty from within, then the consciousness that people in front of him connect with is what is being reflected. And this is how masters become instruments of this purest consciousness. And that's why he always says it's a divine collaboration between the masters. Reaching that state of being completely empty from within, the purest possible flute, is what is challenging. Once it is reached, then all these mind-boggling experiences are just a natural flow. It all naturally happens. And that's what we have witnessed with Mohanji. Before this meditation in Belgrade, just before the wedding, there was another meditation in Novi Sad. And I remember one very sweet man who was really hit hard by life. And he was a doctor, but he lost his wife, then something happened, the child died, and he lost his job. So somewhat similar scenario to what Mohanji went through. And he lost everything, had no money. And he was feeling deeply connected with Meher Baba. I don't know if you heard of Meher Baba, who was a great master indeed. And he prayed to Meher Baba, please bless me at least once in my life. I should experience India and experience the true grace of the Guru. So he thought his wish would never be fulfilled. But the day when Mohanji conducted a meditation in Novi Sad, after he entered the room and sat down and the meditation started, at some point he opened his eyes and he saw Meher Baba through Mohanji. He saw him clearly. Then again, during the Shaktipat, he felt it deeply from within as Mohanji placed his thumb on his forehead. A lot of inner blockages were removed. So Shaktipat being a profound blessing of removing the blockages, removing the unnecessary dirt from within. And as that happened to him, he experienced the flooding of that grace that he was thirsting for, and he cried and cried. So this was a really beautiful experience, something that I remembered. And it's great joy to see that. And Mohanji always says that if there is one person who truly thirsts to connect with that highest consciousness, I'm ready to go travel far and wide for that one person. So that meditation that evening, it was as if it was meant for this man. Surely there were other people who had beautiful experiences, but his was really, really special. So marriage was really sweet, went very fast. We were fully focused on on meditation as well. And after a year later, as the meditations were going on at the home where we stayed, one evening I woke up in the middle of the night, just woke up on my own. And I remember coming in front of our altar. And on our altar, aside from the murtis and photos of the masters, there was also a photo of Amu, Mohanji's first daughter, who got run over by a truck at the age of 4 in the year 2000. And for the first time, I felt like looking into her eyes very deeply. And this happened naturally to me, that I connected with her eyes and I looked and I looked. And suddenly I felt the immense beauty of the soul. And then I prayed to her, and as if I had tears in my eyes, and I prayed to her and I said, I would be truly honored if you would come into my womb as my child. I don't know where this thought came from. I never planned this, or it just happened spontaneously, as a prayer. And I left it there. I didn't think about it much. It was 2 weeks later, during the power of purity meditation, that one of the ladies who was initiated by Mohanji in the Mohanji energy transfer, she transferred the energy on my forehead during the power of purity. And as I was receiving the energy transfer, she made a certain sound, and later on she said how deeply she was touched, that she saw that I was pregnant, and that masters told her, make sure you help her, as she goes through the pregnancy. And she's a doctor, so she naturally felt that's why they asked her to be of help to me. So when she told me that she saw that I'm pregnant, I was looking at her. It's not possible. I totally did not believe it. And then, this thought stayed with me. So a couple of days later, I went to the pharmacy and I bought that test for pregnancy test. And I remember I just went to the bathroom, I did the test. And when I saw the plus sign, I just couldn't believe my eyes. So I came to Mohanji and said, oh my God, it's true, I'm pregnant. So that was like an amazing, amazing experience. So then, as the pregnancy started, I remember how everything went smoothly for me. Everything was taken care of. There was certain turmoil in the office, and in the end, I didn't enjoy the floating position because my boss got sacked and I was kind of floating around. I didn't have the exact title for a while, and that was not very pleasant. And then I got shifted to automotive division, and my boss became the CEO, who is from Australia, and we got along really well, and everything was kind of taken care of, and I felt so grateful. And the pregnancy was going really well. And then at some point, certain tests happened that were not all that pleasant. All ladies during pregnancy, they say when the hairs on the baby's head start growing, you experience heartburn. So I remember waking up in the middle of the night, around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just could not breathe. I felt it was so stuffy in the room. I was restless. I was nervous. Mohanji was sleeping blissfully, but I just could not sleep. I didn't know what to do. And then a thought came into my head. Maybe I should just open the window to get some fresh air. Now, Mohanji gave me a very serious warning. He told me, while in the evening, after it becomes dark, you are safe in the house, but do not go outside, because then you're not safe. So I took this seriously. I never went out in the evening. But in that moment, I kind of forgot about what he said, or I didn't relate that to the act of opening the window. I felt, okay, I'm inside the room, I'm just opening the window. So I had excuses in my mind. But it was almost as if the thoughts that were coming into my mind were not mine. There was some other thoughts were infiltrating my mind. Just open the window, just a little bit to get some fresh air. Then I opened the window and I inhaled the air, but I still could not feel because there was hardly any wind. We're in the Middle East, it's humid, it's hot. So it was not good enough. Then the thought came, I should protrude my head through the window. And in that moment, something surprising happened to me. I heard Mohanji with a coursing voice, very, very funny voice filled with struggle, telling me, close the window. So then I looked, I was like, oh, you're not asleep. And he, after that, breathed heavily, and I could see that he's struggling. So in the end, I closed the window, and next day morning, one of our friends who has the ability to see, he called early morning, and he said, you have to be careful. What you did last night was really dangerous. That almost killed Mohanji. I saw him flying high, very high up with his astral body. And from that height, he saw how some dark energies were kind of luring you, bring your head out, because they wanted to infiltrate your energy field and affect the child. So they were putting those thoughts in your mind. And Mohanji could see that from that height. And there was no time for him to, gradually land back, because he was at a very great height. So he landed in a very fast way. He kind of crash landed. And that could have broken his heart. It's just crash landing into the body, the astral body is very dangerous, and it can harm a person. So it was a miracle that he was not harmed. He did have some neck pain for a couple of days and felt a bit weak. But other than that, he was fine. So that was the grace, that Mohanji was fine. The child was okay. I was okay. But it was an experience that was an eye-opener for me. So after that, there was one more similarly tricky experience, even more painful. As the pregnancy continued, at some point I felt a need to go to the gym, because we paid annual membership in the Crown Plaza Hotel gym, And it was a gym I used to love a lot. It was like my quality me time where I would go on a treadmill, watch a movie, do some exercising, and I missed that. So I was warned by doctors, and overall I knew that pregnant ladies are not supposed to exercise much. It's not recommended. But I just felt this strong pull to go. And on top of that, maybe 2-3 weeks before that, Mohanji casually told me, you can walk slowly outside, but don't go to the gym. If you go to the gym, some of those shadow energies will put silly thoughts in your mind. So I kind of dismissed the statement simply because it's not easy when you live with someone who operates from a higher consciousness. And there are times when he talks like a normal person, and sometimes when he talks from that higher consciousness point. And with Mohanji being so casual about everything, it's not like I have a visible demeanor or type of the way in which he talks or something that will tell me 100% he's talking from the guru standpoint. No, it's all kind of blurred with me. So when he told me, you can walk outside, but you can't do the treadmill walk in the gym, I dismissed it because I thought it was silly. That's absolutely not logical. First of all, it's humid and hot outside, and secondly, walking is walking, whether on the treadmill or outside. So I refused to accept this advice, and I regretted that a lot. So that day, I went to the gym, and I walked on the treadmill. And what happened at that time is that movie Australia with Nicole Kidman, I remember, came on the TV. So there's like a nice TV in front of the treadmill, and I was occupying the treadmill. There would be other people who may want to use it, but I was so engrossed into the movie that I just kept on walking and walking. And I didn't know that this movie is like more than 2 hours long. It's like a really long movie. So I kept watching and watching. My awareness level was very low because my full attention was on the movie, and I didn't pay attention that my body was tired. Then at some point, when I realized, oh my God, it's still not finished, this movie, I came off the treadmill, and then I was just so eager to see the ending that I went to the stepper. And I didn't even bother to set up how do you do usual setup to make it very light. Somebody would have used it before me. I just stepped on the stepper and I continued whichever program was there. It doesn't matter. I was looking at the TV. So that stepper totally exhausted me. Even though I went slowly, it was too tiring for my already tired body. And finally, I saw the end of the movie. I didn't think much of any of it. Went back home. Next morning, I woke up. And I remember it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. The moment I tried to get out of the bed, there was this indescribably sharp and horrible pain in my stomach. It's literally as if somebody was stabbing me with knives into my stomach. And I got shocked, and I crawled and I gasped for air, and I just didn't know what to do. I was desperate, and I told Mohanji what was happening, and we called my gynecologist, and I could see that she was trying to sound stable, but I could hear her telling Mohanji, well, that's definitely not normal in the 4th month of pregnancy. And deep inside, I knew that these were labor pains, contractions which were bringing the child out, meaning miscarriage. And that thought filled me with fear and horrible pain, which I've never felt before. So it was a mixture of this horrendous physical pain and the fear and emotional pain and the resistance. No, I don't want to lose my child. I don't want to lose my child. So it was like a very agonizing experience. And at some point, Mohanji walked to the altar and he prayed. I just remember him with his ponytail and the office suit. He had to go for a meeting because somebody from the royal office was coming. It was a meeting where he at least had to appear for 5-10 minutes. He said he had to go. but he would apologize himself and say that he has an emergency and just to deliver what he's supposed to say, and he would rush back. That's what he told me. And then before he left, he prayed. And telepathically, he got a message from Shirdi Baba that I should swallow a packet of his vibhuti. So he brought this packet of vibhuti to me. I was on the bed, all curved up and in pain. And he said, when you can, just gulp this entire package. So I remember Satya Sai vibhuti is white and very mild, but Shirdi Baba vibhuti is like crunchy and an actual ash, and it's not so easy to just swallow the entire pack from a mind's point of view, right? So I was in so much of pain, and the contractions were now coming within less than 2 minutes. So I would just rest a bit for a minute, and then again the pain, and then rest a little bit, and then again the agony. And I tried to swallow this vibhuti, but I just didn't have the strength. The pain and the fear was so big that I couldn't even lift my head. And then it was 45 minutes, I remember, already passed. And I could feel the end is nearing, It's just, it was like the contractions were faster. I could feel that the end is coming. And without thinking, I just forced myself. I remember I forced myself, I have to lift my head to be able to do that, And I somehow did that. I gathered the strength. And I swallowed the vibhuti. And the moment I gulped it, the pain stopped. I was in a state of shock. It's literally as if somebody touched me with a magic wand. And I just couldn't believe it's all over. And I remember I went to the restroom and to empty my bowels. I was so full of stress and tension. And it was a very deep and painful experience. And then I washed myself, got dressed. The same moment I got ready, Mohanji came. We rushed to the nearby hospital. But there's this immense gratitude because it's not coming back, And I just knew that everything is fine. So we went to the doctors and they did the scanning and they said that it was visible that there were some contractions visible on the walls of the uterus, but they said nothing to worry, baby is fine. So after that, I told Mohanji, I'm gonna listen to everything you say. I was just feeling so bad, that I did not listen to this key advice, and it was a big lesson for me, a big warning. So overall, months passed by, and it was time to plan for delivery. I decided to deliver Mila in Serbia to make the paperwork easier, and also I felt that it just meant a lot to me to have my mom next to me after the delivery and just get that fresh air from Europe, and overall I just felt it should be there. So I made all the necessary arrangements, went to Serbia. It had to be 2 months in advance in order to be able to fly. And I remember the energy with which I left. With Mila, everything was so special. As she was growing in my womb, with each Shirdi Baba Arati every weekend, I was feeling our connection. I could feel that I'm able to talk to her. Like I would place my palms until they get very warm and send loving energy. And I did some kind of a semi-hypno session with one prenatal yoga lady from South Africa who was very sweet and deep lady. And she guided me through this session where I connected with Mila's essence. And we made a pact that when the delivery happens, we're going to do this together as a team. And it was very, very sweet. And she said, child will talk to you in symbols. So first symbol that came during that session, very vividly in my inner vision, was like an umbrella moving upward as if filled with helium, like a helium balloon moving upward. And that the hook of the umbrella at the bottom was hooked to my heart chakra, and I was floating up and growing spiritually. And then I saw an image of the baby and a little star, a light on top of her head. And she was saying to me that in this life you are continuing your spiritual evolution from heart chakra up, but I'm here. I felt that this is what she said. And the prenatal yoga lady confirmed that she would interpret it in the same way. And then another image was the image of a feather. And I could clearly see this feather moving left and right and left and gradually, very slowly falling down. And then if somebody tries to speed up the falling by blowing from the top to push it down, then it goes like all the way around and even goes further up, right? You disturb the flow. So it was a clear message from her. See me as a feather and keep moving with me and be in that flow. So that's what I remembered from the session, and that's what I brought with me to the delivery. Days and weeks before delivery, I was so active. I was sorting out changing my name to Mohan as the last name in my Croatian passport, Serbian passport, running this office, that office. A lot of charity was done at that time. I conducted meditations left and right in Belgrade and Novi Sad. Nothing was difficult to me. I was full of energy. It was an amazing pregnancy. I don't know about other ladies, but for me, it was totally great. I loved it. And I walked every day a lot. And I felt I was ready for this delivery. So plus I was practicing yoga, of course. And when the day came, my aunt was a great help. We went to the hospital that I chose in Belgrade. And when the delivery pains came, they were far more challenging than I could imagine. So it started around 4 o'clock in the morning, then became stronger around 10 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't sleep much, maybe 2-3 hours. I didn't eat. I vomited a couple of times. So by the afternoon, with all this pain, I felt at some point a drop in the energy. And in the hospital itself, when they checked me, they said, oh, you are only 5 centimeters dilated. So that was another disappointment. I thought I was ready, it's going to end now. They said, you're hardly halfway through. And all this completely knocked me off. And then I went into a very dark space where I felt, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to die today. And hopefully the child will come out of me alive, but I cannot survive this. There's no strength left, And I feel that probably all ladies go through this. It's like a dark night of the soul moment during delivery, where you just go very deep into darkness. And then in the midst of that darkness and despair, there was a moment when suddenly I remembered the feather. And then I thought about, the feather, I placed my palms on the belly and I asked the child, please help me. Let's go through this together. And I decided I'm going to stand up. I removed all those wires and stuff. So I need to get up. So they allowed me to stand up. And intuitively, I started moving my body, remembering the feather. And I was flowing. So I was moving my hips in like a spiral shape. And the head was soft, neck was soft. And I was just flowing like that. And as I entered this flow, in one moment I could almost feel the galaxies. It was like a flow in which I entered. Very sacred space. And somehow all those contractions, they were coming, they were hitting me, but they were no longer this painful because my attention went elsewhere. And in that flow, I could feel the light from the top, as if the grace of the masters was coming. And the lady, the midwife came 20 minutes later, and she asked if she would like to check me. And she says, oh my God, I've never seen this before. In the last 20 minutes, the remaining 5 centimeters happened. You're ready. So that was like the most amazing experience. So then the delivery happened. And I'm so grateful to this lady. She allowed me to keep Mila on my chest and calm her down. And when she came out, those little fingers, that body still, covered with amniotic fluid, and the whole moment was just gone so deep. It's like being at the source of creation, and all of a sudden, a huge explosion of joy. I feel only women can experience this. This explosion of joy has no words. Even if you were climbing a mountain for 10 years and then finally reached the top and said, "Yay!" This would be that times 100. Because it's actually being there at the source, the spring of divine love in the moment of creation, and seeing the child, feeling still the pulsation in the umbilical cord still pulsating. And she kept lying on my chest until she calmed down. She could hear my heartbeat. She calmed down. And then, only then, they cut the cord. I'm so grateful for all that. And Mila entered our lives. So it was a very special experience for me. And I really hope to inspire all ladies to go for the natural delivery. No matter what the shortcuts and lures of the cesarean cut and all that may be, I strongly stand for this. Okay, so to move on, after Mila was only 40 days old, we had to fly back to Oman because I had no more leave days left. And when I arrived to Oman, Mohanji's parents greeted us at the airport, and Mohanji, first of all, Mohanji was in Serbia day after Mila was born, and he was part of that whole grace there. And there were people visiting us. It was all very beautiful. Then we went back to Oman together as a family of 3. And Mohanji's parents greeted us at the airport. And I'll never forget the emotional moment when Amma held Mila in her arms and she cried. And I understood the healing that happened in their lives, after losing Amu and going through the pain. Going through the pain of losing Amu, they felt, they have attained that point of healing, and there's a new life to look forward to, and new joy to be shared. So we started our life again in Oman as a family, and Amanacha was with us for 3 months, and then they would go back to India, and my mom would come for 3 months, like that. So we managed. In the office, I was promoted into marketing manager, so that was a bit challenging. But somehow I managed with the breastfeeding, with because the house was nearby. So I understood how the masters took care. And I could go, I could have enough time to breastfeed, come back, still do the job. But as this whole process went on, at some point I started getting tired, because I was not getting enough sleep, and I was promoted into my managerial position, which was much more challenging. I had to be focused. There were car launches, there were events, there was a lot of pressure, and it was tough on me at that time. And this was the time when Mohanji made a decision to take the plunge and leave his office work and start the mission. It was in 2012, a year after Mila was born. And I remember at that time, I was feeling a bit lost. I was feeling a bit lost because I felt I have to continue working. He actually paid back all the debts that he had from his end and my end. All the debts were cleared, but there were no savings. So I felt, well, one of us has to work, because what are we going to live from? So a lot of these programs from the war days and insecurities were coming, and I simply had to hold on to that job. At the same time, I could see him completely light, glowing. He entered his life's purpose, and he was on a different vibration level. And while he was vibrating in that lightness and joy and continuous meetings, and there were talks about ashram being built 3 kilometers from Pune in India, and all the planning and all. So there was a lot of excitement, and I would come back from work and I felt I was excluded, I was not having the time to think about any of that because I was too preoccupied with my obligations at work, with my responsibilities with the child, with the everyday stuff. And I was not happy about that. I didn't want that to be my reality, but I felt that I was stuck in that. And on top of that, this kind of feeling of a certain disconnect was really one of the darkest moments. It looks naive, but it actually started like killing me from inside because I felt that my connection with that consciousness was being slowly weakened, as if there were some forces which were distancing me from Mohanji. And a group of people plus Mohanji went for Kailash Yatra in July 2012. And with all my heart, I wanted to go. But I have a small child, I have a job in my office. On top of it, even if I didn't have a child, I could not go because July is the month of Ramadan, where the car sales are like more than double. And our CEO would never let any manager take leave at that time. This is the time to earn money, and everybody has to be focused, and there's a lot of work to be done, much more than usual. So I felt, okay, that's my reality, I have to accept it. But I was so heavy with all this. And while all of them were getting excited, prepared for the Kailash Yatra, I was sinking and sinking. And that heaviness was like eating me from inside. So it reached its peak during the Yatra itself. And while Mohanji went for the Kailash Yatra, I tried to meditate and I could not feel any energy. I could not feel any connection. And for me, that was the height of darkness, to feel disconnected from the very base on which I built myself, And because losing the connection and consciousness for me was worse than losing my life. And I didn't know what to do, So at some point I was like trying to deal with it. I didn't know how to do it. And I remember that during the Kailash Yatra, I started to pray intensely. I sat in front of the altar, I prayed. And then one day, I felt that my throat was parched. I felt that my skin was dry. I could feel my breath was heavy. And for a moment, I didn't understand what this meant. And then I understood that I connected. I connected with Mohanji astrally, and that I was feeling what he was feeling in the midst of the yatra, in that high altitude, and this is what he was feeling in his body. And somehow that heavy burden, the heavy block was removed. And I could feel again. I could feel the vibration on my crown and my forehead. I could feel Mohanji. I could feel the connection. And I was so grateful. So in the time of his dip in the Mansarovar lake and the darshan of Kailash, this darkness was removed from me. So that's something I remember. But my desire to go to Kailash just kept growing. And the following year, 2013, I could not go. And I realized that every year it's going to be like that. So the thought started entering my mind that I need to work on leaving this job. I need to gather my strength and take the plunge the same way Mohanji took the plunge and leave the job. So I slowly started working towards that, but it was not all that easy, so it still took some time. And then 2013 was the year when further challenges happened. Now I refrain from blaming any particular person for my difficulties, because I realized that either karmically or through divine challenges, we have to go through some experiences. But at that time, I had no friend around me. I had nobody mature that I could confide in, and nobody with whom I could share, how difficult it was for me to go sleep late every night, wake up early every morning, dedicate time to the child, handle the office. Plus, every weekend I was doing AMU care work and some of our charity activities, and there was no time for myself. And it was not easy for me to go through this. I was completely in the world and energy of doership, and that doership was so heavy. So on top of that, I remember that in 2013, there was an ashram being set up near Pune, and Mohanji started living there, literally. It was in the remote area in the nature, behind the river. There was a grand ceremony in which Mila and I also participated with the drum and the umbrella, and it was very beautiful. And after that, there was an installation of Dattatreya Murti. And this was a very sacred and powerful moment. A beautiful white Murti of Datta was installed. And Mohanji did the sacred ceremony of Prana Pratishta, the transfer of energy, where he literally placed part of his soul in that Murti. And all of us were overwhelmed because all this time we didn't have the ashram. And we felt it was so important that he, grounds all these energies somewhere, because this is at the heart of our tradition. Like, for example, Shirdi is the powerful place where Baba stayed, and later on his samadhi is there, and now so many people get experiences there. So it was important to choose a place like this for Mohanji. And we thought this is what Pune area, in vicinity of Pune in the nature, what this place would be. However, things did not work out that way. And people who, literally a family that invested most money into the ashram, in the end kind of took over. And eventually Mohanji distanced himself from this entire thing. So this ashram did not happen. And then that same year, since he left his job, he has entrusted his best friend at that time, whom he considered like his successor in the shipping business, like after 2 decades of so many contacts and so much of knowledge. He trained him, he transferred his entire contact list, opened up like 3 companies, made this friend in charge of it, and with full trust just gave it all. And he said, I'm going to now dedicate myself completely to the mission work. So he envisioned that through these companies, we would have some, not very big income, but some income would be coming. And in that way, I could also leave my job and could somewhere maybe be responsible for some correspondence or something with these 3 companies. But pretty much it would be something that would give us a little bit of income every month, sufficient for us to survive and focus fully on the mission work. So that was Mohanji's plan and vision. And even I gave my car to this friend of Mohanji's and everything. It was a complete trust. Now Mohanji has that, he's predominantly Shiva energy, and it's exactly that Bholenath, it's in that innocence of Shiva. He fully has that complete trust in people, lightness, innocence. So he fully believed this is going to happen. And there was not even a legal document signed because he was already finishing his visa in Oman. So he's like, okay, no need to sign a legal document. It's a matter of trust. Like you have a best friend and you trust. And then the moment all this ended, this agreement did not actually bear fruit. And there was a complete betrayal from the side of his friend. And that was tough to handle. That sort of that level of betrayal, but there was not even one conversation. There was some silly excuse, some kind of bad-mouthing campaign that started, and his friend kind of believed these stories apparently, and there was just no communication with Mohanji, complete severing of relationship, distancing, and no income of any sort, no conversation, nothing. So after that betrayal, I felt that Mohanji kind of withdrew quite a lot, and he didn't seem that open anymore. He was an introvert before, and when he gives with his whole heart, you know. But after that betrayal, I felt he did close down quite a lot. And that was only the beginning of the challenges. There was another big blow that happened very soon. And before that, I will just touch upon another super painful experience. This was the experience when in November 2013, there was a big charity concert of Amo Care in Delhi. And we went there to participate in this concert. And just a couple of days before the concert, we went to one 7-star hotel to arrange a meeting to kind of see if we can get more funding from their HR department. There were signs that we could get there, and I was kind of representing Amo Care, went for the meeting. So in order to kind of look appropriate for the meeting, I wore high heels. Mila was with me. So she was at that time only like 2.5 years old. And we went for this meeting. There was delay, and there was some kind of grass area around. And I didn't know what to do with the child because there were so many fancy decorations, glass, crystal, this and that. So I went outside with her, and I just let her roam around a little bit. And she started running up the grass. And I was looking, it's like a huge grass area with like a bit hilly. And at the top there was a bush fence. So it looked very safe. And I thought, okay, this will be, a safe place for her to run around a little bit. But then she kept running up, and she was very bubbly and joyous and going up, up, up. And because of the high heels, I didn't feel like running after her straight away, but I was standing at the concrete bottom, and I was like, Mila, come back, come back. But she wouldn't come back. And then she went up to the top of that small hill. And I started running towards her. And as I ran towards her, in one moment, I looked up and I saw her head went like this, as if something pulled her by the hair. There was nothing physically visible, but I clearly felt something pulled her, because first the head went and then poof, she disappeared. So I ran frantically. It's like, what? Where did she disappear? And, already your heartbeat increases from running up the hill. On top of that, there was this horrible fear coming up. And I came on the top. And as I was climbing, I saw that the bush fence was not compact. There was like a 0.5 meter kind of space between the two bush fences. And I felt exactly that was the area where she went. And I came there and I looked. There was like a completely perpendicular to the floor, like 180-degree fall onto the marble floor. And Mila was at the bottom there. Like I could see her from top, from 4.5 meters. It feels like it's like a second floor of the building. She was like spread out on the floor and lying down, immovable. So I just, when something like this happens, it's a state of shock in which I simply froze in that moment. And first of all, it's that feeling of denial where you feel like this can't be happening. This can't be my reality. And in that moment, I felt my soul left my body. I came out. I already had a near-death experience, so I had some familiarity with this sensation. My soul came out and was floating above, this scene of her fall. And I was praying, please God, if she goes, I go. I cannot stand this pain, because the pain was like ripping me apart. And then as I floated above her, I had this thought suddenly, maybe it's not yet over. Maybe there's still a chance. Maybe she's alive. So I try to come back into the body, but it's like pushing a balloon, inside. It's like weightless. It doesn't enter back that easily. So I was like struggling to settle within the body. I tried to make some sound from my mouth, but the voice was not coming. And in that moment, later on I learned this in yoga, it's called the psoas muscle. The muscle within the pelvis, from the fifth vertebra, goes through the pelvis and then to the femoral bone of the leg. So from that muscle is that fight or flight response. It's the seat of that shock. From that muscle, I suddenly straightened my body. And with that incredibly fast movement of straightening my body, I was able to release the sound, help! But I didn't realize there was a stone arch right above my head somehow. And the edge of that stone arch was from stone, and it was a bit sharp. And it cut exactly the area of my crown. I had like almost 2.5, 3 centimeter cut on top of my head. And a lot of blood, like a fountain of blood, started coming out from top of my head. But I couldn't even, I was in so much of adrenaline that I didn't even feel the pain. And I didn't care about my physical pain, because the emotional pain was 5,000 times stronger. So I just shouted, help, help. And I was trying to hold my hand on top of my head. And finally, the guards heard me. And then I said, my child, and one of them ran around and they picked Mila up. And then they carried her, and I somehow came down. They brought a towel, and I held the towel. And then as I held her in my arms, I could feel that she was alive. There was a groaning sound. She was in pain, but she was alive. So then even worse agony started, because I just could not remember any first aid or any tip or anything about how you're supposed to hold somebody with spinal injury, or somebody who fell and possibly hurt the spine. And I'm so afraid, how do I hold her? And she just wanted to be very close to my heart. She was just trying to come close, but I had to keep one hand on top of my head. So in the car, I held her with one hand, praying that I don't harm her forever with the wrong posture. And on top of that, this pain was growing on my head. And we were going through the traffic, and this was like the longest trip ever. Now, the blessing was that hospital was only 15 minutes away by car. Mohanji was not there. His parents were somewhere nearby, but none of them were with me at this venue of the 7-star hotel, only some of our friends. So I just sat in that car, and the thoughts that were coming in my head, they were just so destructive. It was like that depth of the painful samskara. It's like the thoughts, like, it's all your fault, you and your stupid heels. Why didn't you run after her? It's like that mind's game of like, I should have, I could have, not being in the present moment. So I couldn't stand that pain and that fear. And the thoughts like, she's never gonna walk again. She may not even remember you after this. All this horrible thoughts were coming. And then in the midst of all that, I tried breathing technique. Nothing worked. I couldn't help myself. Suddenly I started chanting. And I'm sharing this because maybe some of you may find yourself in this situation where the pain becomes so strong and that you don't know what to do. This is the time to reach out for the help. Reach out to the masters. So I started chanting Om Sai Shri Sai Jai Jai Sai. Om Sai Shri Sai Jai Jai Sai. The thoughts are coming and I'm chanting. The thoughts are coming, I'm chanting. I fought. It was like an inner war in which I managed to get my thoughts shifted into the mantra and survive the pain of this not knowing what will happen next. So when we reached the doctor, first he asked Mila to move the legs, and that was that horrible moment of facing the fear that she's going to be an invalid. And then first she couldn't move the legs, then somewhere she got annoyed and she started kicking, and I was so relieved. I said, okay, she will walk. And then the next was, we noticed the bump at the bottom of her skull. There was a hematome, internal bleeding, which is the most dangerous thing, because that means the blood is being collected within, and it will affect the brain, and anything can happen when the hematome inside the head starts growing. So they said most likely it will have to be a brain surgery. In that moment, Mohanji arrives, Amma and Acha, his parents, they arrive as well. And I remember that Amma and Acha's face was yellow, because they had to relive that trauma of losing the child again. And Mohanji, his face was like completely firm and quiet, and he was so withdrawn within, just staying within. And we went through the whole procedure of measurements and this and that, and then they said, okay, she's been given some medicine now. We will wait for 3 hours, and then they will do this brain scan again. And if the hematome continues to grow, there will be the brain surgery, an outcome of which can never be guaranteed. So there's a high possibility of even losing the child, because you just don't know in which direction it will go. So at that time, during those 3 hours, we all sat, and somehow the news spread. Mohanji at one point sat by Mila's bed, and he placed his hand on her head, and somebody took a photo of this and put it on Facebook, and like everybody came to know about what is happening. So it was like just not something one would want to share, in the depth of that pain. But on the other hand, there were so many people within our spiritual family who prayed. So I don't know, was it good or bad? I can't tell, but it was all really tough to handle at the moment. And what happened then is, I came to know this from Mohanji, but I felt it intuitively as well. He placed his hand. I didn't know this would be so tough for me to talk about. He placed his hand on her head, and in that moment he prayed to take that karma on himself. So it was agreed with the masters that his exit from the body will be through some sort of coagulation of blood in the brain, and that's how he would end his life. But Mila was saved in that moment. So after that, another unforgettable experience happened. There were some people who came to see us, and one of those people wrote a blog later on saying that the main reason I came there was to see how Mohanji is going to react. If he's really a master as he claims to be, or he's just faking it. So he wrote, and I couldn't believe this. I was totally shocked to hear this. So, but later on I thought about, at least this man was honest to admit, he did admit that these were his thoughts. And he was convinced. He passed the test. And after 3 hours, they have measured Mila's brain again, and they said that a miracle has happened, that the hematome size is reduced drastically, that they've not seen this in their years of practice, and so forth, and that the child is fine. But we had to stay in the emergency unit for 3 days for them to monitor her condition. So that was the end of that drama. So Mila and I went to the ICU, and it was a very unpleasant experience. There were people dying around us, like a man with some kind of a lung failure was like breathing very heavily and loudly, and they were injecting Mila with the IV, and she hated injections because we were on homeopathy. So there was this continuous struggle and lack of sleep, but I was ready to go through any of it. I didn't care because the main struggle was over. And I just knew that she was going to be fine. And then the funniest thing, I'll never forget this. We came out of the hospital. I still have the band-aid on my head because they, with like a needle and a thread, they stitched my wound. And there was, of course, shaven hair. So with Mila, I revisited the spot. I looked at this wall, tall wall that was like 4.5 meters tall. And then above it, a little grass as a decoration. So it was just like the most silly setup. I never thought any hotel would have something like this. But then again, it's something one has to accept. And then that day we got dressed up, and it was day for the AmuCare humanitarian concert, fundraising concert. It was called Act Fusion. And being active with AmuCare, I was asked to come on stage and share a few words. So I remember getting dressed up in a sari and then shifting hair from one side to another and putting a pin so that I covered the hole on the top and dressing Mila up. And she was continuously holding. She would not let me go. She was glued onto me. Somehow we got dressed. That evening came. All our friends came. The concert was about to start. I went on the stage and I spoke, holding my child in my hands. I was so grateful that I got my life back. My child is walking and healthy, and we are again doing our charity. And I really feel, I'm so convinced that when we do charity, we earn this bank balance, we earn this grace, and we really can withdraw that bank balance at a time when we need it the most. So I know that this charity work helped a lot in saving Mila. But as I said, the key was Mohanji's intervention and the grace of the masters. And then the following day or two, we went to a beautiful reenactment of Shirdi. In Gurgaon, their area of Delhi, there is one temple of Shirdi Baba, where they kind of imitated Shirdi. So you have a small Dwarkamai, and there's also like a small cave area, and it's very, very sweet with beautiful energy. So we went there. I felt the pull. I wanted to just go and express my gratitude. I was so overwhelmed with gratitude after all this that happened. So we went there. I was holding Mila, and all our friends are going somewhere. So the priest in charge of that place spoke in Hindi, and he showed like with his hand and bacha something. So I knew bacha means the child, but I didn't understand what he was telling me. So I went closer and I was trying to, he said, wait. And then he went behind the altar, and I was waiting what's going to happen now. And he came and he brought this green scarf. And then he asked me to bring the child closer, and he put the scarf around her head and tied it under the chin. Now, the thing was that Mila would not allow anyone to touch her. She was so fidgety after this fall, and she would just hold tight to me. Nobody could touch her. The moment that happened, she would complain. But here it was as if she was hypnotized. She just looked at him. God knows what she saw. I'm sure she felt Baba's presence because her eyes were wide open. And as the priest was putting the scarf, she just kept looking. And then he tied the scarf. And then for another half an hour, she just did not complain about the scarf at all. And I just knew, intuitively, I knew the green is the color of healing. And the priest was asked by Baba to tie that scarf around her hand to speed up her healing. And it was an immense gratitude. So I'll end this session just by sharing one more short experience. about the blessing of Baba, how he was blessing Mila. So first it was the vibhuti during the miscarriage. There was this, and even when she was younger, maybe only 5-6 months old, it was a weekend and we were having our like longer sleep for me catching up with all the office schedule. And it was like 3 p.m. And Mila and I was breastfeeding her and we dozed off. And it was clearly an astral experience because it was very vivid. And I could feel myself moving. And I came to a village in Maharashtra where people spoke Marathi. And it was like benches and dust in a very basic kind of environment. And there I was just with Mila in my hands. And suddenly Shirdi Baba came in front. And he was very simple, without the white, how do you call that, white scarf he was wearing on his head. Just the dhoti and a barren chest. And he walked straight towards us. And he looked at me, smiled, and he extended his hands, to give him Mila. So without thinking, I just handed her over. And she was so happy, smiling in his arms. And he walked somewhere with her, up somewhere. And I couldn't see where he is. And then I sat there and I waited. And then while waiting, suddenly I had these thoughts. What does this mean? Baba took Mila away. Does this mean that she will not physically stay with me anymore? There were these thoughts coming like, where did he take her? So I already started inquiring with the people around, but they all spoke Marathi and I couldn't understand what they were saying. And soon after I saw him coming back with a big smile and glowing eyes. And Mila was also very chirpy and happy. And as he was coming back, he was coming closer to me. And the closer he came, I could feel this energy growing. And then I started to twirl. So I was like rotating and levitating. So I remember the big toe of my right foot was barely touching the ground, just enough to feel that I'm on the ground, but my whole body was rotating and rotating. And then at some point I could hear that old man's coarse voice, ba 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 ba. So as the speed of the rotating increased, this ba became faster and faster and faster, and I just exploded in that bliss. And then Mila came into my arms, and the next thing I know, we are on the bed, and I suddenly woke up in that energy, was still felt, that grace. It's indescribably beautiful. And then the most beautiful thing happened next. Mila woke up next minute or so, and she looked at me in the eyes. She was so small and cute, barely started talking, and she said, ba 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 ba. And it was like a confirmation. I experienced it as well. I remember all this as well. So it was just something so special. And really, in all those most difficult moments, Baba was with us. And, he always calls Mohanji my son. And I really feel it is our family. It is the family feeling, the feeling of complete protection and grace. And a couple of months after Mila's fall, we visited Vital Babaji. That was the year, it was early 2014, and that was the year when he left his body. So we were so blessed to meet him. And I'll never forget that meeting. Maybe this is the blessing I will end the session with. So we went to his ashram, and Mila was running around, so I couldn't sit with him too long. But I remember the moment as he came out, he called Mohanji my son, same way as Baba addresses him. And then he told me also, just treat me as your father, or your grandpa, we are family, have a seat, it was so much of warmth. And Mila was crawling somewhere, and I told him, she recently had a fall from like second floor on her head on a marble floor. So it's just been a very tough experience. So I have to run after her. I have to keep an eye on her. And he said, what fall? Even if she fell from the 20th floor, nothing would happen to her. Tradition is taking care of her. Just you don't expect to hear something so deep and so loving and so beautiful. So I was like, okay. I didn't know what to say. I was just, stunned. And I remember that was the time where he removed a ring from his finger and he placed it on Mohanji's finger. And Mohanji asked if I mind him removing the ring finger, our wedding ring, and replacing it with this ring. This is the ring of the tradition, because he could only keep it on that finger. And I said, absolutely no problem with me. Because from the beginning, our marriage was not about possessing each other, controlling each other. It was always about the higher purpose. And even my wedding ring, which is this, as you can see, is a ring I found in Oman, the only one I found, which has, the light is very strong, which has two hearts connected at one point. And each heart is as a symbol of love, also has a perfect flow of energy within itself. And then there's a point where they connect. So the energy is perfect within the separate parts and perfect together. So for me, this was the true wedding ring. And I asked Moji, can this be my wedding ring? I don't quite enjoy wearing a ring on the ring finger. So we were always flexible about it. So in the end, I have my ring in the shape of two hearts. He has his ring from Vital Babaji. But the marriage is not about the rings, about binding each other, controlling each other. Marriage is about serving together and always supporting each other on the path so that we grow to our highest possible version. So thank you. This was a bit longer session today. Thank you for being with me. We'll continue again next Saturday.